Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Campbell. I'm a college counselor at Perry Hall High School, and I'm here this evening with my colleague Kristen Pettit, who is a college counselor at the Carver Center. And so we're here this evening to talk about financial aid. Ms. Pettit will be manning the chat, so if you would have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We will have a moment at the end where you can certainly unmute and ask questions, or we can see if there are any unanswered questions in the chat. But we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome. Thanks for joining us. So this evening, we're going to be talking about financial aid. Now, this is mainly for seniors getting ready for the college process, but this certainly is great information really for any student looking ahead to post-secondary education. So financial aid is really any type of aid of funding that a student can receive to help pay for their post-secondary expenses. They're really broken into two categories. So we have need-based aid, which is if you financially qualify because you cannot afford what it is you're trying to pay for, and then merit-based aid. Merit-based aid is really based on something special about you. Usually merit-based aid is offered when a student is applying to the college, gets accepted, gets that letter of acceptance, and oftentimes merit-based aid will be included in their financial aid package. So that could be something special about you, like your grades or your SAT scores or your athletic ability. So it's really something that spoke to the institution pretty much in your application, though colleges can offer merit-based aid down the road as well, and we'll talk about that. So where does the money come from? So the first place is you and your family. So this would be savings plans, savings that you as a student have created over time with a part-time job, or savings from checks from Christmas and things like that. Also money from parents or families. This would be the first line of where money comes from. The second place is the federal government, and that is through the FAFSA, which stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, which we will be talking about this evening. The third place is the state of Maryland. So this would be if you are staying in the state of Maryland, you could potentially qualify for Maryland state aid. Now, you do have to remember that you must stay in state to use that. So in other words, you cannot get a grant through the state of Maryland and then take that to Pennsylvania to use for a school outside of the state of Maryland. The fourth place is the school itself. So schools themselves may offer merit-based or need-based aid. And the last place is scholarships that you apply for separately. So this may be a national scholarship such as Coca-Cola or Burger King, where it is open to all seniors across the country. Then there are more local scholarships, civic organizations. For instance, I know at my school, we often have the Elks Club or the Rotary Club or the White Marsh Business Association. So local organizations. And then also your high schools often offer local scholarships through the PTSA, sports boosters, band boosters, theater boosters, etc. So when we're looking at types of financial aid, like I said, they do come from multiple different places. The self-help aid are loans that you might take out, which we want the smallest amount possible. Work study, you could potentially be granted through your FAFSA, and we'll talk about that. And then gift aid are scholarships and grants. Scholarships and grants are the free money. You want as much of that as you possibly can get, because that is money that is given to you for your education that you do not need to pay back. So just saying this up front, I am certainly not a financial advisor, and neither is Ms. Pettit. We are college counselors, though we have a lot of experience in the financial aid world and helping students with this process. These processes, the websites, the amounts of money that are offered, everything changes, particularly with the federal government. And that usually is July 1st that the new rates come out. So things can change on a yearly basis. So whatever is true now may not be true down the road. So, what is the first step to applying for financial aid? And that really is applying for the FAFSA. And we encourage every senior to apply for the FAFSA. And you apply for the FAFSA every year of post secondary education. So you can go onto FAFSA.gov. That's the easiest website to go onto. You simply log into that and you are able to complete that starting October 1st of every school year. When you start the FAFSA process, you as a student will need to create what's called an FSA ID. And basically, that's going to be your ID to log in, a username and password to log into the FAFSA site. The parent will also create an account as well. So be sure to save your login information because you will use the same account every year of post-secondary education. There's a section on the FAFSA that the student will complete and a section that the parent will complete. And those two accounts will really kind of merge together and work as one for the student's behalf. Once you go on to FAFSA.gov, and be very careful because there are some FAFSA.coms, FAFSA.orgs. Those are not the free sites through the federal government. Make sure that you are doing FAFSA.gov. That will get you onto the legitimate government website for the FAFSA. Once you have gone on there and you have your usernames and passwords and your FSA IDs, you're really ready to begin. Make sure that you are doing the 23-24 FAFSA if you are a current senior. So in other words, for the FAFSA, you are always preparing for the year ahead. You're always preparing for the year that you will need the aid next. And for our seniors this year, you'll be doing the 23-24 FAFSA. However, you will be using 2021 tax information. Very important to note that that is the tax year that you are using this year. So gather all of your tax returns from 2021, and that way you'll be ready to input the information on the FAFSA. On the FAFSA, it will obviously be asking for that tax return information. It will also ask you what schools you are applying for. So on the FAFSA, you'll want to list all schools that you are applying for. Even if you end up not applying for a school and the school gets your FAFSA information, that is perfectly okay. They just do nothing with it if you don't follow through with the application. So make sure you list all schools, even CCBC, if that is a school that you are interested in, as well as vocational schools or technical schools, all can be listed on the FAFSA. One thing to note is you can only do 10 schools at a time. So what we suggest is always having one Maryland public school listed. And then in addition to that, having any schools that have the earliest application or FAFSA deadlines. Start with those first, process your FAFSA. In a couple of days, once the process has gone through, the student will receive an email saying that your FAFSA has been processed successfully. And that's what you're really waiting for. Once you have gotten that email, if you have more than 10 schools that you're applying to, after that, you can go log back into your FAFSA, remove any number of schools. You can remove them all or just the number that you need and add in the new schools. But make sure you then go all the way back to the end of the FAFSA, sign it electronically, and submit it at that point so that the new schools get processed. So what does a college do with your FAFSA? So this really is how colleges prepare your financial aid packages, including need-based aid. So when we're looking at the FAFSA and what colleges do with that information, you will be getting a student aid report through the FAFSA. So that will be sent to you once it is processed, and you will log back into your FAFSA and see what is called an EFC, and that stands for Estimated Family Contribution. And that really means the amount of money that the college that the federal government believes that your family can afford to pay for college in the coming year. Now, whether or not that is truly the amount of money you have sitting around, oftentimes there's a discrepancy. So when you see your EFC, there is not typically a decimal point and there is not typically a dollar sign. So it will say EFC and then a number, but that is a dollar amount. It can be anywhere from zero, which means that you may qualify for the most aid, up to tens of thousands of dollars. So that does not necessarily mean that's the cost you're paying or the price you're paying, or the money that you have to outlay, but it is the number that the college will be using. So for instance, what the college does is takes their cost of attendance, COA, and you can find this on any college website. That cost of attendance is the big number. So that is tuition, that is room and board, books and fees and supplies, the big number that you see, not necessarily the price that you pay, but we'll say the sticker price. So the college will take the cost of attendance, they will subtract your EFC from the cost of attendance to get the amount of financial need that they feel that you have for the year. So for instance, as you see on the slide here, if you have an EFC of zero, meaning you're eligible for a full Pell Grant, and we'll talk about that in a moment, they would take that EFC, which always stays the same because that's from the FAFSA. The cost of attendance can differ, of course, by the college. So they subtract it, and that's where they come up with your financial need. That financial need is then used to calculate your financial aid package, which is then sent to you after you receive your decision letter. So for each college that you are accepted to, you will also receive a separate financial aid package. So this really lays out the FAFSA process. You complete the FAFSA. The FAFSA is processed. You receive the student aid report, and the college receives your FAFSA information. The college reviews the information, assembles the package, sends that to you. You will get that for each college you have been accepted to. So you really can line those up together and really see what the bottom line is of what it is going to cost you for each college. You review those award packages, and by May 1st, you need to let colleges know if you are attending and put your deposit down. So when we're looking at the FAFSA, one thing I wanted to mention in the actual FAFSA, there is a thing called the IRS data retrieval tool. This is a really great tool for families to use, and parents will see it located in their section. There will be basically a button to push online. So you'll push that and you'll be able to see if it will allow the IRS information from your taxes to be input directly into your FAFSA. So it doesn't always work. There are some times, depending on the tax filing status of the parents, that it may not work. But it is always worth a try, because when it does, it makes it very easy. You don't have to sit with a tax form and transcribe that information into the FAFSA. It automatically inputs that information directly into your FAFSA. And it's strongly encouraged also because it really eliminates the need for what is called verification. So oftentimes, if you as a parent are just inputting the information from a tax return, it is possible that your FAFSA will be selected for what is called verification, and where that college may want more financial information just to verify the income that you have input. But when it comes directly from the IRS, it really eliminates that step and also eliminates errors. So on the FAFSA, one of the questions for students is whether a student is considered independent or dependent. So this has really nothing to do with tax filing status. So in other words, if a parent has claimed a child on their tax returns as a dependent, this really is a separate meaning for the FAFSA. So there are very few students who can actually claim themselves independent, where they would not need a parent to complete the FAFSA. So you can see on this slide, a lot of this is not going to apply to our current students. There are going to be some instances that may apply. So for instance, at any time since you turned 13, were you in foster care, a ward of the court, or were your parents deceased? Are you an emancipated minor? Does someone have legal guardianship of you? court papers stating that they are your legal guardian other than a parent. And are you at risk or homeless, at risk of being homeless or homeless? Those instances are really the instances for our students that if that was the case for you as a student, you could file as an independent student where you would not need a parent to help you file the FAFSA. Other than that, the federal government believes in FAFSA world that it is the parent's responsibility to assist with paying for college and to assist with the FAFSA. So if you run into an issue, we do have instances where students have moved out of a parent's home. They don't communicate with parents, but they're living with a relative or a friend. No one else has legal guardianship of them. It is still, in the eyes of the federal government, the parent's responsibility to help with the FAFSA. So if that would happen to you, if that is a situation for you, certainly talk with your counselor, talk with your college counselor at your high school. But really at that point, you would still need to file the FAFSA, but then work with the college itself and their financial aid office to assist you with aid. Okay, so this slide is updated information regarding offers of grants and loans that are current through the federal government. So there are 2 grants through the federal government that you might receive, and this is simply based on income and household size. And the Pell Grant max last year was $64.95 for that 21-22. For this year, it is upwards of $6,800. So that has moved. The Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, which is through the federal government but offered through the college, is up to $4,000. So those are the amounts that you may see on your student aid report. Because you list the colleges on your FAFSA, your college will automatically get this information and include on their financial aid package. If you received a Pell Grant, you will see that as a subtraction off of the cost of attendance. Same with the SEOG grant. Loans are offered to students based on filing the FAFSA. So this is really the first time that a student may be able to get a loan without a credit history and without a cosigner. For students, the maximum amount without a parent's credit being involved would be $5,500, and that's split between an unsubsidized and subsidized loan. If a parent applies for a parent loan and does not get that loan because their credit is not good, the student can then be offered up to, I believe it's $9,500 in their freshman year. As they progress through college, they are offered a student loan every year. In sophomore year, it goes up to $6,500, junior and senior up to $7,500, and then for graduate students, it's on up from that. As I mentioned, these loans are split between subsidized and unsubsidized. Obviously, the interest rate is the same. However, the difference between the two is the subsidized is really the better, the cheaper of the loans because the federal government pays the interest while the student is in college. For unsubsidized loans, the interest starts to accrue as soon as the loan is taken out. So that is going to be the more expensive loan. Of course, we always say to students, take the minimum amount of loans that you need. You do not need to take a loan. You don't have to take a loan, but if you need to, take the minimum amount. And you do not have to take the whole amount of $5,500. You can take a lesser amount. Parent loans are also offered through the federal government, and those are through credit. So your credit is run. If your credit is good, you may be offered a parent loan up to the cost of attendance. Now, if your credit is less than stellar, then you may be offered a smaller loan or no loan at all. And in that case, that is where that next amount of money gets offered to the student. So again, for parents, that is always based on credit. Work study is another thing that is offered through the federal government. When you're completing your FAFSA, we always say to please, they will ask you, do you want to be considered for work study? we always tell students to go ahead and say yes. That does not commit you to it, and you can certainly turn that down later. But this gives you the opportunity to be considered for work study. Work study is simply a job on the campus of the school, and the federal government pays your paycheck. There are limits to the amounts that you would get for work study, and it is up to the college how they distribute the money to you. So sometimes it could be directly through a paycheck, which you would just put into your bank account, or it gets applied to your balance of your bill at the school. It just depends upon the college. So after completing the FAFSA, you really want to check and make sure that that's gone through for each school. You may get emails from the colleges as well that they want additional information. They will let you know that. Typically that will come through an email to the student or through their application financial aid portal that they've created once they applied to the school. One of the most popular financial aid forms that a school may ask for is the CSS profile. And this is a rather in-depth financial aid form that some schools may ask for. So about 400 schools do ask for this. The college will let you know if you need to complete this. This really delves into a family's finances much more than the FAFSA does. So this would be real estate, retirement accounts, businesses, etc. And to complete the CSS profile, it does cost money as well. So it's $25 registration fee through the College Board account for the first CSS profile for the first college, and then 25 for the initial, and then 16 for each additional college after that. If you have a College Board fee waiver in your account, you can get those fees waived through that. So colleges may also ask for, in addition, federal tax documents. They may ask for W-2s, for the returns, financial statements, etc. And a lot of that may happen if you were not able to use that IRS data retrieval tool. That is oftentimes when colleges will ask for verification of income. If you have a special circumstance in your family, so remember, you're using the 2021 taxes. So I use the example of, let's say in 2021, both parents were employed and there was a certain steady income. But after the taxes were filed, then say mom lost her job. So the current income in the household is much less than was portrayed on the 2021 taxes. But remember, the college is going off of what the FAFSA used, which are those tax returns. So in reality, there may be a large deficit of money in the home. If that is the case, for whatever reason, could that be a job loss, a death in the family, large medical bills, a divorce, anything that would severely impact the amount of, income, an income change, then really it is incumbent upon the family to reach out to the financial aid offices of the colleges that they applied to and received financial aid packages from. They often want to hear from the students, so it's great for the students to call the financial aid offices and file what's called an extenuating or special circumstance. We always tell students, obviously, be honest, because oftentimes they are going to ask for documentation. So there are forms to fill out with documentation to verify the hardship, but oftentimes schools can work with families. Financial aid offices at colleges are a great resource if this is the case. So when we're looking at the FAFSA as far as staying in the state of Maryland, when you select one Maryland institution and put that on your FAFSA, you will be contacted by the Maryland Higher Education Commission. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. But it is important to note that in the state of Maryland, the deadline for the FAFSA in the state of Maryland is March 1st. After March 1st, the FAFSA is still open federally, nationally. However, there's no guarantee of Maryland money after March 1st if you file the FAFSA later. So both the student and parents must be Maryland residents. You must use a home address, so no P.O. boxes, and this is all triggered by putting at least one Maryland institution on your FAFSA. So talking about state of Maryland financial aid. So as we mentioned, the federal government with the FAFSA, now we're talking about the state of Maryland. So this is through the Maryland Higher Education Commission, or MHEC. And when you put a Maryland school on your FAFSA, you will be contacted by MHEC and prompted to create what is called an MD CAPS account. And that website is on the slide. And you do not need to wait for from the email from MHEC. After you complete your FAFSA, you certainly can go on to the MD-CAP site and create the account. You do not need a parent for this part. It links with your FAFSA. The student is the one who creates the account with a new username and password. And all awards through the state of Maryland, including grant money, the College Promise program, which is that free CCBC tuition, which we'll talk about, as well as delegate and senatorial scholarships, are all located within the MD CAPS account and have to be accepted. Physically, you have to go in and click accept in that account to get those awards. One thing I wanted to note at the very bottom, you see that website, MD Elect. In order to apply for senatorial or delegate scholarships in Maryland, you can go on to mdelect.net, enter in your home address, and that will pull up who your local senators and delegates are based on your home address. You would go onto their websites, their .com websites, not their .gov websites. You would go onto their .com websites and look to see if they have scholarships available. Typically, those scholarships are going to be offered in the late winter into the early spring. If you are awarded a scholarship through a delegate or senator, it will be loaded into your MD CAPS account, again, where you must accept that award. So here are some of the awards through the state of Maryland. The big grants are the Educational Assistance Grant, which is up to about $3,000, and the GA grant, which is the Guaranteed Access Grant, and that's up to $19,400. This is strictly based on income and household size. So there's no way to apply for those. It is based on the information in your FAFSA. The scholarships through the senators and the delegates are listed here. And the senatorial scholarships are usually $400 and up with a maximum of $11,800. And the delegate scholarships are up to the cost of attendance or $28,000, which is based on University of Maryland system. So other opportunities through the state, you may also see awards offered for technical colleges, vocational schools, students who might be attending those as well. If a student has been in foster care, tuition waivers, as well as part-time grants for students who are going less than 12 credits per semester. One thing also to mention is the academic common market. So Maryland works with several southern states. And if you have a major that you are pursuing that is not offered in the state of Maryland, but is offered in one of the academic common market states, you can get in-state tuition even though you're going out of state. So you can simply Google academic common market, and you can look in the MHEC website as well, and it will give you the states as well as the schools who are involved in that. Again, that would have to be for a major that is not offered in the state of Maryland. So these are just some dates to be aware of as far as the GA grant system. That's that big money through the state of Maryland. Obviously, October 1st, the FAFSA opens. March 1st is when students, that's the latest date to file a FAFSA in the state of Maryland. In MD CAPS, you must submit all supporting documentation that the state of Maryland is asking for in your MD CAPS account by April 1st. So for the GA grant, you must submit a first semester transcript. I wanted to make sure I said that correctly. So a mid-year transcript where you have to have a 2.5 or better GPA in order to get that grant money. So you first qualify financially, and then you must qualify academically by the 2.5 by mid-year senior year. May 1st is when the awards will be loaded into the MD CAPS account for guaranteed access and and the EA grant as well, the Educational Assistance Grant. So May 1st, they'll be loaded into the account. The student must go physically into the MD CAPS account and click accept on the awards, and also let the state of Maryland know which school they are attending. Again, these can only be used for schools in the state of Maryland. Now, I do see the May 15th, the last chance deadline. I really tell students, don't pay attention to that. Really work off of the deadlines March 1st, April 1st, May 1st. Those are the ones to pay attention to. Again, early bird gets the worm. This is not an unlimited amount of money, so the sooner you apply for these things, the better. So let's talk about the College Promise Scholarship. This is that free money to go to CCBC if you are a resident in Baltimore County. So how do you qualify? You must be a resident. You have to be a graduate of a public, parochial, or private high school. You must have a 2.3 or better GPA by the end of your senior year. We can upload your transcript to MD-CAPS mid-year if you already have a 2.3 or better, but you have until the end of your senior year for the College Promise Scholarship to qualify with that 2.3 or better. You must have completed the FAFSA and have listed CCBC as a school on your FAFSA. The income of the household must be $150,000 or less based on the FAFSA. And one thing I did want to mention, with the FAFSA, you can only use one household. So if a student is split between two households, you would use whichever household you spend more than 50% of the time at. If that is equal, then you would use the household that supports you more financially. So 150,000 or less for the FAFSA household. You must enroll full-time, so that is 12 credits per semester, so roughly 4 classes or more per semester. And then you need to maintain that 2.3 while at CCBC. Do remember, this is considered a last dollar scholarship, and really what that means is all other grants and scholarships will be applied to your balance at CCBC first, and then if there is any remaining balance for the tuition, the College Promise then will kick in. So again, completing the FAFSA is a must, listing CCBC on your FAFSA. You would need to apply to CCBC if you have never taken classes through CCBC while in high school. You would need to apply online. If you have taken early college access programming through CCBC and BCPS, you're already a CCBC student, so you would not need to apply again. At the end of the year, you would let your counselor know that's where you're attending so that they could send your final transcript from your senior year at the end of your senior year to CCBC. Also to note is that colleges themselves, as we mentioned at the very beginning, do offer scholarships, and this would be beyond what they offered during the admission period. So once a student has been accepted to a school and decides upon a school, so let's say I decide I'm going to go to Towson and I've put my deposit down by May 1st, that's the national deadline. Once I've done that, I can then go on to Towson's website, for instance, under their financial aid tab, and check out what scholarships they offer through the institution. So those are going to be for students who are going to be enrolled at the college. Oftentimes they're based on major or programming, but we do encourage you to go ahead once you have committed to a college to check out the scholarships that are located usually on the financial aid page of the college. So great opportunities, scholarships are already out there. FastWeb, Career InfoNet is another that you can check out, finaid.org, lots of scholarship websites out there, and those are going to be more of the national scholarships. So you're competing with a large group of students, anyone who in the country who is also applying, but really good scholarships to go ahead and start applying for. Also, you're going to know that there are local scholarships, as we mentioned, through the school, through your high school, through local civic organizations. Really check with your college counselor and your school counselor. I know for Perry Hall, we post them on a scholarship bulletin board in our Schoology groups. The local scholarships, though they may not be quite as big financially, your odds are very good because usually you're only up against other students maybe at your school or in your community who have also applied for those scholarships. And don't ignore those little scholarships for a few $100s or $1,000. They really start to add up, and we call that stacking awards. And that's how students really start to get into and start to bring those bills down. Also, at the end, it did mention, please make sure there are a lot of scams out there. Oftentimes, students will receive emails about certain scholarship sites, and students go on, and there will be, oh, just put in your credit card. We'll charge you $75 and give you access to thousands of scholarships. Please do not do that. Every year, I have students who get scammed in that way. All of this information, the FAFSA, including also scholarships, are out there for free, and they have free access. If you are paying money, that is a scam. You should never pay money to get money. Also, your Naviance account. As a BCPS student, you have access to scholarships already loaded into your account. You simply go to the colleges tab, you go to the scholarship search on the drop-down menu, and it will take you to a site where it will have preloaded scholarships in the site. You'll see the scholarship on the left, the deadline, and the max award. And once you click on the name of the scholarship, it will take you to usually an area where you can apply or the website and give you the requirements for the scholarship. You can also do the match and filter process, which is at the top right, where you can actually filter scholarships based on things about you. So if I was a female student looking to do engineering, I could put those demographics in, and then Naviance will search through the site for scholarships that match me. Okay, so deadlines, really making sure not only do colleges have deadlines for applications, but they also have deadlines for the FAFSA. So go on to the colleges that you're looking to apply to, go onto their websites, go onto the financial aid pages, and check out what the FAFSA deadlines are for each school. Again, state of Maryland will be March 1st. The FAFSA is open now. Some important websites for you to check out. FAFSA.gov is where you're going to go to create your FSA ID as well as complete your FAFSA. That MHEC site, that's going to have your links to all the different types of grants and scholarships that are available, as well as the Academic Common Market. And the MD-CAPS is where you will actually go to upload materials and accept grant and scholarship money through the state of Maryland. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if there are any questions that we have out there, and you certainly can feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions, or if there are any questions, Ms. Pettit, in the chat that we have not answered.
Actually, there's been no questions. I keep on just adding a couple of tips and some reminders for everyone. So, and a bunch of links. So hopefully that helps out for everybody.
Great, great. So please, we will, as this is being recorded, Ms. Wade will actually post this. So we will have this available through the BCPS Parent University. And of course, all those links that Ms. Pettit shared, great links to check out for local, national, and Maryland scholarships.
So, Ms. Campbell, I just want to throw out there one last thing, because I'm sure that you have this as well. But I have students who will say that my parents make too much money. So I'm going to say that we always encourage students to fill the FAFSA out regardless. Simply because there's so many factors that go into determining student aid, family size, different school years and stuff. So we're going to recommend that you fill it out because some colleges won't even look at scholarship information, institutional grants, and things like that without the FAFSA. So even if you think you don't qualify, please fill it out. We highly recommend it. And at the very least, you can get some grants and scholarships through the institution.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that.
Sure thing.
And then I do see a question, what happens if I don't complete the CSS profile for those selected schools? It really is something that they mandate for the family to do, and they will not create a financial aid package for the student if they are requiring the CSS profile to be completed. So it's a little invasive, I will say, financially. Parents don't love it because it does ask a lot of detailed questions about finances. But if a school does require it, they want that to complete the financial aid package.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Can you show us the slide about for the important deadlines again? Yes, I'm happy to do that.
And just to let everybody know, I will also be sending a copy of the presentation along with the chat transcript. So that all of those great tips and links that Ms. Pettit put in the chat, I will send those along as well, so you don't miss anything when you're reviewing the recording.
So I don't know if this was the slide you were looking for, or if you were looking for that color coded slide. I'll go back to that in just a moment for the state of Maryland, which is a little bit different. Let me go back to that one. And here are the deadlines for Maryland.
Yep, that's the one they were looking for.
Okay, great.
Any last minute questions?
Any other questions?
We're happy to answer. We're not experts, but we'll try.
We'll give it a shot.
It can be laborious, that's for sure. Yes. So we always recommend, like, there is a save key in there when you're filling out the FAFSA. So if you need to come back to it for any reason, if you just want to do it, kind of chunk it down a little bit and do it in sections, that's absolutely up to you. There is a save key that you can create that you're able to go back into it for sure. And I know there's a lot of parents and students out there. This might be the first run through. As Ms. Campbell knows already, for sure. I mean, we've talked to several students in our buildings alone, that it's kind of tedious and there's a lot of questions. So some of the links that I provided in the chat definitely will help out, because some of the walkthroughs will go line by line with you. We'll explain to you what you need to enter into this box if you have any questions and things like that. So if there's ever questions that pop up, like, what happens if my parents aren't U.S. citizens, but I am? What do I do at that point in time? It's entering all zeros in that space. So there's a lot of information that can go into that. And as well as, again, just taking your time with it, making sure that everything looks good. The IRS data retrieval tool, as Ms. Campbell said in the beginning, is really going to be beneficial to enter all that information in.
And there's lots of great YouTube videos out there, even through the federal government, on step-by-step completing the FAFSA. There's a lot of materials out there. I know for me, and I'm sure Ms. Pettit does as well, we post all of those resources in our Schoology group. So we always provide those to our students. So I believe that most college counselors in Baltimore County are doing that as well.
Absolutely. And honestly, if you guys have any questions at all at any point in time, ask your college counselor, because while we may not know the answers, we certainly have access to the people that do. So we will certainly harass them for those answers if we can't answer that.
So I see for students with two households, divorced parents, does this require income of the parent that is the head of the household who claims the child on the taxes, or the higher of the two incomes? Or does it require to add incomes of both parents? So for a student who has divorced parents, you may only use one household for the FAFSA, and it has nothing really to do with taxes, in the sense of whether you claim that child on your taxes or not. For the sense of the FAFSA, that is not a concern. Really what the federal government says is, number one, it's wherever the student spends more than 50% of their time, use that household. If that's equal, then use whichever household provides more financial support for that student. So that's really what the FAFSA is looking at. Now, one other thing to mention, when you're looking at a household, who are you talking about in that household? So you're talking about two biological parents, either married or unmarried. If they're at the same house, then it would be both of their incomes. A single parent would just be their income. If a parent is remarried, and so there is a step parent legally married, then it would be the parent and the step parent's income. So I hope that helps a little bit. Yes. So if mom widowed recently, but tax for 2021 doesn't show it, yes, you are absolutely correct. Will it be certain circumstances for the school? So absolutely, once you get the financial aid packages, or even before, once the child has been accepted, go ahead and certainly contact the financial aid office and let them know that there has been a death in the family, that there is a special circumstance, and that you would like to, file for that. So that's going to absolutely be very, very important.
Yeah. And I did mention this, Ms. Campbell, too, in the chat. Check with the admissions offices, because oftentimes those admissions officers will give students scholarships more than the financial aid offices will. So I would double check with them for sure too, because any little bit helps. I surely say that.
Right. And it always helps to ask. All they can say is no. So, and then you're no worse off than you were before. So I always tell students, when in doubt, ask, call. I know kids don't like to make phone calls, but they really want to hear from the students, or at the very least, a call with the parent and the student together, because this really is the student's accounts and that type of thing. So, but definitely ask. These admissions office, financial aid offices are very, very helpful.
Yeah, and honestly, they'll remember the student actually advocating for themselves, and if there is extra money to be given, they'll remember those students. And many admissions reps have actually told us that if there's extra money, they'll go ahead and look for those students who are actually advocating for themselves. So just putting it out there.
Right. And at what moment should I ask admissions office after I would be accepted? Yes. So once you get that acceptance letter, then feel free to reach out to them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So the HBCU fair is coming up next month in November. Any advice to prepare for this fair? So great. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes. So it's actually, I believe, going to be in December this year. So it's a little bit later. And we'll be sending out a lot of information about how to prepare for the HBCU fair. It is virtual. And so, but it'll be HBCUs from all over the country will be involved with this. And typically we're going to have, I believe, students apply through the Common Black College app ahead of time, which will be helpful. So some schools may offer instant admissions if students have already applied through that CBCA. And Ms. Pettit, could you go ahead and throw in the website for the Common Black College app?
Sure.
Just so students have that. And so preparing by getting your application done, having a transcript available. So you would get that through either your counselor or your college counselor. And then there will be sessions in schools that you sign up for, links to do that. So we will be sending that out en masse, probably starting next month. With lots of Schoology messages, I'm sure, as well as BCPS will be advertising that as well. So thank you for bringing that up.
And we'll send out stuff in that, including like how you can prepare, what are really good questions that you can ask. And I always recommend, as I know Ms. Campbell does it at Perry Hall, at Carver, we always recommend, hey, check those schools out. If that's not even a school that you're interested in, what better way to get over your anxiety and your fears than to actually talk to a rep, maybe a school that you're not going to. That way you can get over that hump a little bit, for sure. And it really helps students kind of ease those anxieties a little bit. So that's what I always recommend for that as well. And keep in mind for the Common Black application, if you are on there and you just decide to apply by those, that's great. All of the 60 some HBCUs actually have access to your information. You'll put in your top 4 schools, and then you would just reach out to any other schools to actually access that information. So just keep that in mind too. You're not applying to all 64, but you are actually asking them to pull your information.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all so very much. I thank Ms. Pettit for all her great links and information. And yes, please fill out our feedback form. That would be great. We'd love to hear from you. Always looking to improve for next time. We're so glad that you joined us. I hope you all enjoy a lovely 4-day weekend for our students. I'm really jealous, but for our parents, hope you enjoy your weekend as well. And please, we'll have this recording out for you. And we thank you, BCPS, for inviting us to present.
Thank you both so much for a wonderful presentation as always.
Absolutely.
And for anybody still listening, the feedback form is in the chat, but it will also be sent out via email along with the presentation recording, the presentation itself, and then any other supporting documents that we might want to include based on conversations that we've had with other parents. And in the feedback form, just to let you know, there's a space for you to ask questions of our presenters. So later on, if you want to go back and watch the recording, if you want to look through the documents and the links and you have questions, you can always either go to the feedback form and ask the questions there. You can email parentyou@bcps.org, and I'll put that in the chat as well, or email your school counselor or Ms. Campbell or Ms. Pettit directly. Everybody's here to help.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Take care, everybody.